Each year at this time at church, they usually start talking about stewardship and pledging. At church, they always talked about pledging money, and they never talked about pledging our time or other talents because money, money is something you can control. You can control the narrative and the outcome, and people's time and energy and volunteering is just it's just probably too problematic. In the investment world, they have the three different categories of investment personality, and that's one is a risk taker, someone who's more moderate, and someone who's a contrarian. If you fall into the contrarian profile, you're probably more apt to run in the opposite direction. Welcome to Sunday Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith. Each week at Sunday Coffee Hour, we talk about everything and nothing. This week we talked about how dogs just love cars, cooking on a Viking stove, and we pondered whether Google is male or female. At church, the readings were from Kings, and that was the concept of sometimes when we're asked to do simple things, we're reluctant to do it, but we're just all over difficult tasks and topics. And from Timothy, it was about not to wrangle over words. And the gospel reading was about the healing of the 10 lepers. At Washington National Cathedral, they're still on their sermon series as we lead up to the uh, midterm elections, and they're preaching on the Micah passage about seeking justice, showing mercy, and walking humbly with your Lord. And today they were talking about showing mercy. And Bishop Buddy preached about showing mercy for those we disagree with. And similar to last week's sermon, she was kind of treading a fine line between being partisan and being judgmental because she never quite leaned into the idea that both sides or all of us can be wrong. And she couched a little bit more in the idea of people who we disagree with. At St. James Cathedral, the sermon was on electionary readings and not on a political sermon series, and they preached about the difference between being thankful and being grateful. And Mr. Lister, the visiting pastor there, preached about the idea that we can choose to be thankful, and it's something we can elicit a feeling about, but being grateful is something probably more akin to being a gift from God, and we should be mindful of when we, aside from all circumstances and all problems and all issues and all the things we agree and disagree with, we sense the idea that we're grateful. We're grateful for being in this time and even in the muck. When you can show gratitude in the worst of times, that's truly a gift. At Washington National Cathedral, Bishop Buddy did share one of my favorite speakers, Brene Brown, as a reference when she said that it's often not kind to say nothing. Sometimes we do need to speak up, and I do believe that's true. Whenever we see something that's amiss, we probably do need to say something, but akin to the idea of not seeing ourselves as being wrong, sometimes difficult to put on the hat of saying something because none of us want to be judgmental. In all of this time of stewardship and pledging and giving, we need to be mindful of where we are on our political spectrum and our spiritual spectrum. Are we a risk taker? Are we middle of the road? Are we more likely to run the opposite direction? At the end of Bishop Buddy's sermon at Washington National Cathedral, she shared the story as an example of the hurricane-ravaged Florida and Governor DeSantis working alongside President Biden, and how they joined together in spite of their great differences and the polar opposite end of the spectrum to come together to truly help people. And I appreciated that, but again, I sense the onus was on Governor DeSantis, that somehow he was viewed as probably more in the wrong, and it was more this monogamous view of President Biden. He was the one that was showing the mercy by crossing the divide, and I don't know if I was completely buying that. In the Bible story of Jesus, at the end of his ministry, we have the example of the governor Pontius Pilate, who I think he was pretty much in line with the powers that be, and with Caesar. There wasn't a big divide there, and even though he wanted to rule independently and do what he personally thought was correct by freeing Jesus, he bent to the will of actually not Rome, but the people. The people are who wanted Jesus executed. So as we move ahead into election season, the midterm, I think we need to figure out if we're just a rabble of people looking for someone's execution, or if we're ready to run in another direction. If you would like to join us at Sunday Coffee Hour is every Sunday at 12 noon Central Time. I will include my email in the description of this video, and I'll be happy to send you an invitation. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.